And my mind rebels at stagnation. Give me what? Give me problems. You may give me the most abstruse cryptogram. Then I'm in my own proper element. I am merely a brain, the rest nothing more than an appendix. I abhor this dull routine of existence. Now I wonder, have any of you ever gazed from your windows at night, observed the yellow fog swirling about the dun-colored rooftops? Was there ever anything quite so mundane, so prosaic, so tedious? At times like these, how I yearn for another Ripper. With what absolute ease and impunity could he leap from the fog, slake his bloodlust, return from whence he had come. Scotland Yard would be none the wiser. All crime these days is commonplace. Life itself commonplace. And that is why I've invented my own profession. I am the last of the highest court of appeal, the world's only unofficial consulting detective. Now you understand, whenever those worthies of Scotland Yard, Lestrade, Gregson, Athelney Jones, they find themselves out of their depths, which incidentally is their customary state. Of course, they come to me here in Baker Street. They lay before me the facts. I provide them with the solutions. But as I say, life is commonplace. And nothing save that which is in itself commonplace has any role to play here in this humdrum world. You may wonder where friend Watson is this night. Oh, he has forsaken me. Marriage. Although I wonder, is marital bliss an oxymoron? Now, from my point of view, women, you understand, are never to be entirely trusted. They are illogical, absolute anathema to the mind of a detective. Although now you are here, it would be a wasted opportunity, would it not, if I were not to share with you a curious narrative connected to the time Watson found himself a wife for the first time. I mean to say the affair of the great Agra Treasure. Miss Mary Morstan, the name of our client. Now, she had been recommended to me by her employer, Mrs. Cecil Forrester. I had been able to do Mrs. Forrester a good turn, a trifling domestic affair of some years previously. And so Miss Morstan had come to me. And the mystery itself, I found, promised to be an interesting affair. Would at least keep the tedium at bay for a little while. Now, Mary Morstan told me that her father, Captain Morstan, was attached to the 34th Bombay Infantry. His wife, Miss Morstan's mother, had died. Therefore, Miss Morstan herself had been sent back to England when she was 12 years of age. She had not seen her father since. However, upon the 3rd of December, which is to say nearly 10 years previously, she had received word from this Captain Morstan that he was returning to England. He had received 12 months' leave. Furthermore, he was putting up at Langham's Hotel Naturally, Miss Morstan was agog with excitement. However, Captain Morstan never arrived, and when, upon the following day, she called at Langham's Hotel, inquiring of the staff where Captain Morstan was, they were at a loss. He was nowhere to be seen. Oh, his trunks were there, a few books, bric-a-brac, but of the man himself, nothing. Now, the only individual with whom Morstan was on friendly terms was a Major Sholto, who then retired. Formerly, they had both been attached to the same military. However, Sholto confirmed that he was unaware even that his erstwhile companion was in London. And so there the matter remained, a mystery. But curious events were soon to present themselves 4 years later. To be exact, upon the 4th of May, 1882, Miss Morstan's attention was brought to a newspaper advertisement asking for the address of Miss Mary Morstan. It said that she was a wronged woman, that furthermore, this wrong, it was felt, needed to be rectified. Shortly thereafter, having given her address, she received through the post a small cardboard box containing a lustrous pearl. And every year since then, always upon the same date, May the 4th, Miss Morstan said she had received the same, a pearl. Again, the identity of this benefactor never was made known. And during all of those years still, the precise whereabouts of Captain Morstan remained an enigma. Now, the reason why Miss Morstan had brought herself here to Baker Street was apropos another notice in the newspaper. Again, it noted how Miss Morstan was a wronged woman, dreadfully so, and that how there was some guardian angel who wished to make amends for the injustices that had been done to her. Furthermore, that she was to make her way to the Lyceum Theatre that same night. The third pillar from the left outside, she was allowed to bring two friends with her for safety's sake. However, on no account whatsoever were there to be policemen. If they were, all would be lost. Well, her employer, Mrs. Cecil Forrester, recommended she come to me. Now you understand, even by that time, the friend Watson was absolutely smitten with Miss Morstan. But then that tells you everything you need to know about Watson, does it not? Very well, I accepted Miss Morstan's case there and then. I told her to return here to my rooms in Baker Street at 6 o'clock that evening. Now, that afternoon, I occupied myself. The old newspapers of the Times. Now, regarding this Major Sholto, you will recollect that he had been an erstwhile colleague of Captain Morstan. I discovered that Major Sholto had died. Died at the end of April, 1882. Curious, is it not? Or do you not understand? Major Sholto and Captain Morstan, both serving in the same infantry, both overseas. Sholto dies. And before the week is out, Miss Morstan then receives a written communication requesting her address, and then the first of several pearls sent to her. But she is termed a wronged woman. Does it not then suggest to you, as it did to me, these disparate elements all are intertwined? Morstan, Sholto, the pearl, Indeed, that same correspondence advising her to take herself to the Lyceum Theatre that same night. And Miss Morstan returned here to my rooms at Baker Street, promptly at 6. Now we hailed a hansom that took friend Watson, myself, and Miss Morstan to the Lyceum. We alighted. We were waiting there by the third pillar, when from behind the same appeared a smartly dressed gentleman, evidently a groom. Upon assuring him that neither Watson nor myself was an officer of the official police force, snapped his fingers. Another carriage appeared. And so we embarked upon our mysterious errand. We knew not where we were going, nor for what reason. Oh, surely mystery is better than tedium. Now, Mary Morstan had brought something else with her that day. She had been going through her late father's papers, and then she had found a curious diagram. Evidently, it had been looked after, neatly pressed, neatly folded, as though it had been stored within a pocketbook, and therefore the document must be of some small interest. It appeared to depict a plan of some large building, a fort, perhaps. And curious to say, written neatly in ink, the side of the paper, strange words, of the sign of the four, and then 4 names: Jonathan Small, Dost Akbar, Abdullah Khan, Mohammed Singh. Oh, whilst Watson made cow eyes at Miss Morstan, I allowed them to get on with it. I occupied my own mind with determining what direction precisely we were heading in, certainly across the river, across the Vauxhall Bridge. I understand the blinds to the carriage were closed. However, I was able to ascertain to an extent where we were going. Eventually into the desolate, windswept outer suburbs. A row of rather forlorn-looking 2-storied villas. And then the coach came to a halt. The doors opened and we stepped without. We were directed to one particular building. We knocked upon the door, we pulled at the bell, and then the owner of said dwelling place answered us and bade us be welcome. This was the first time we had made the acquaintance of Mr. Thaddeus Sholto himself. Yeah, Mr. Thaddeus Sholto, at your service. Please come in, come in. What do you think of my humble abode? A little oasis in the howling desert of South London. I hope you don't mind the sweet aroma of tobacco. It is my only weakness. Well, you are Miss Morstan, I understand. Yes, and yeah, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, yes. Oh, and a doctor. Oh, a doctor, Dr. Watson, yes. I wonder, do you have your stethoscope with you, Doctor, my valves? I am so sorely troubled by my valves. The aortic, I feel, is quite satisfactory, but the mitral valve, the heart, you understand, I'm not a well man. Well, I ought to abstain from tobacco, but I need some joy in this otherwise barren existence. I do what I can here. This is Oriental refuge, but my heart, my valves. It is a shame, Miss Morstan, that your Father did not pay more attention to his heart, else he may have been alive still to this day. Oh, forgive me, Miss Morstan, I forget you. You are not fully aware that he sadly is no longer with us. Yes. You understand. You, Mr. Holmes, the doctor, Miss Morstan. Yeah, my twin brother, Bartholomew. Formerly, we all lived together with my father, Major John Sholto. We understand he had retired from the army, had returned here to England. Quite a wealthy man, sum of money. Although he never did elaborate at the time as to how that came into his possession. He bought a place, Pondicherry Lodge. I will take you there later. We must be combined, you understand. My brother Bartholomew is a dreadful man, his temper. He will always berate me, but with all of us combined against him, Mr. Holmes, I felt certain that brother Bartholomew could not possibly prevail. Pondicherry Lodge, Norwood, our father, brother Bartholomew, and myself. I remember my father. He always seemed to have something hanging over his head. A haunted man, it seemed to me, although I know not why. He was always horrified at the sight of individuals with one wooden leg. Once, a gentleman with a wooden leg was seen in the vicinity. Our father shot at him with his revolver. A dreadful scandal. The poor gentleman was a harmless tradesman. We had to pay him a sum of money to keep it amongst ourselves. I remember our father received a letter from India. He went downhill from there. Yeah, I mean to say it was around the year 1882. He never divulged what was in the letter. He consigned it to the flames immediately, but he took to his bed shortly thereafter and became even more worried about wooden-legged men. Eventually, Brother Bartholomew and I could do nothing as our dear father's condition deteriorated rapidly. He took to his bed. Yeah, our father, that is, not Brother Bartholomew. My brother and I were either side of him. It was then our father chose to unburden himself, to tell us the secret as to where he had obtained his wealth. Come closer, my son. This has been weighing upon my conscience for years now. My greed has brought me to this. I tell you both now, Bartholomew and Thaddeus, as a warning to avoid the sins that I have fallen prey to. Our wealth, a sum of treasure found back in India. There were complications. I brought it back here to England, Fort Pondicherry Lodge. I thought my past never would catch up with me. I was wrong. I remember December in the year 78. Another old soldier, Captain Arthur Morstan, returned to England. He knew about the treasure also. He was entitled to a share of the treasure. He and 4 others. But I kept it all to myself. Greed, you understand. Morstan's heart always was weak. We exchanged words. We argued, a heated altercation. Suddenly, he clutched at his side. His heart, I knew. He fell. He struck his head upon the corner of the chest that contained the treasure. My treasure. It's ought to have been his. It was an accident. In no way at all could I have been blamed. I was perplexed as to what I ought to do. I was kneeling beside the body. When I looked up, there was my servant looking at me, smiling. Do not worry, he said. If we act now, no one need suspect a thing. Why, I told him that I was not responsible. I did not kill him. If my own servant even did not believe me, what hope had I of convincing members of a jury? So the course was set. My servant and I disposed of Morstan's body. You need not know where or how. And I realize his daughter, Miss Mary Morstan, deserves at least some of that treasure. At least my greed has forbade me. Bartholomew, Thaddeus, you see over there that chaplet inlaid with pearls. You will send to one of these pearls, one, to Miss Morstan, by way of recompense. But not until I am gone. I may yet really. We don't wish to give these things away, do we? I concealed the treasure. It is hidden away. No one knows where. This is the reason why I have summoned you both. Bartholomew, Thaddeus, the Agra treasure I have hidden away in it. Well, of course, we were horrified. Brother Bartholomew and I returned, and there was a malevolent-looking face, bearded man peering in at us from the flower bed. I rushed outside. I could see no trace of him, you see it. There was a circular imprint in the soil, here and there again. It is as though the individual had vanished into the darkness. When I returned, he cried. Poor father's heart had burst. He was dead already, the fright. Although Brother Bartholomew was furious that he had not lived long enough in which to inform us where the treasure was hidden. The following day, we happened to come back into this room, the bedroom where our father had breathed his last. His papers were strewn about the room, and there was something pinned to him, a piece of paper, a card, the sign of the four crosses, the arms interlocking, and then four names: Jonathan Small, Muhammad Singh, Dost Akbar, Abdullah Khan. Brother Bartholomew and I searched for that treasure. Oh, good heavens, how we searched. It was nowhere to be seen. When it came to the business of the pearl, of recompense for Miss Morstan, I'm afraid Brother Bartholomew and I had an exchange of words. He is greedy. He shares our late father's besetting fault. Whereas I have more than enough money. I do not see why it should not be shared. And Miss Morstan, you will appreciate, at no point have I ever been desirous of keeping father's treasure to ourselves. It is only fair, it is only proper that you have your late father's share of the wealth. That is why I sent for you. That is why I placed the advertisement 7 years ago, requesting your address. You will take a note of this, Mr. Holmes, will you not? My vows. The reason why you are here now, the gentleman and Miss Morstan, just yesterday, Brother Bartholomew sent word. He has found the treasure. Wonderfully ingenious. Well, you understand, after all of this time, he realized there was a discrepancy, you understand. He ascertained the height of Pondicherry Lodge, some 74 feet, and then he ascertained the respective heights of the rooms within. By no stretch of the imagination, no matter what he did, could he make this final figure arrive at any sum higher than 70 feet. Therefore, there was a missing 4 feet. A chamber. That would be where the treasure was concealed, and evidently would need to be at the top of the house in the garret space. And that is why Brother Bartholomew wrote to me yesterday, communicating with me. He had found the treasure. He had found it up there in the attic space. He had so cleverly found it, and that is why now I decided that I will not go alone. That is why I have summoned you, Miss Morstan, and you gentlemen. Brother Bartholomew would not dream of making a stand against our combined force. But I'm not a well man, Doctor, my valves. The aortic is quite adequate, but the others I am not entirely certain. I am something of a valetudinarian, I know, but it's my valves. And so, please, I suggest that now we take our leave. I must wrap up warmly, the night is cold. And then we will travel to Pondicherry Lodge, and together we will state our case. And there is no way whatsoever Brother Bartholomew will be able to deny us what is rightfully Miss Morstan. Come, gentlemen, and Miss Morstan, time waits for no one. I believe it was 7 o'clock in the evening when finally we arrived at Pondicherry Lodge. However, our exit was almost assured before we had begun. We were about to be sent away with a flea in our ear. There was a guard waiting on duty. He had had strict orders from his master, Mr. Bartholomew Sholto, to admit no one other than Brother Thaddeus. However, I thought I'd seen that face before. McMurdo? Why, surely it is McMurdo. The fighter.
Oh, blimey, Mr. Owen, why do you say it was you, eh? Yeah, and if you'd have given me that straight right up under the uppercut like you'd done 4 years ago, I'd have known you immediately. with me and Mr. Holmes, we fought 3 rounds 4 years ago at the boxing club. I'll tell you what, if you turn to the fancy, Mr. Holmes, when you had it done, instead of wasting your time with all this detection malarkey, well, we'd have made a great name for yourself, eh? Well, you ought to have said, no, it's all right, Mr. Sholto. Any friend of Mr. Holmes is a friend of ours indeed. Now, in you come, all of you.
So we made our way up to the front door of Pondicherry Lodge. The housekeeper was in some strait of distress. She had harbored grave fears regarding her master, Bartholomew Sholto. She had not seen him all day. He had locked himself inside his room, and there was no answer to her repeated knocks upon the door. Now, Watson suggested that Miss Morstan stay with the housekeeper. Brother Bartholomew also needed to be found, and so friend Watson and I went up the winding stairwell, closer and closer toward the uppermost reaches of this house. The house itself was in darkness, and that impressed itself upon Thaddeus Sholto as being strange. The moonlight bathed the place in an eerie radiance that lent a macabre feel to what was already a strange evening. The door itself was locked. The key had been turned, however, by peering through the keyhole, one was able to glimpse at least a small portion of what lay within. Ah! It was a macabre scene indeed. The face was illumined by the moonlight, and the rest surrounding it in shadow, as though it floated in midair. It was Thaddeus Sholto himself. And then I remembered, of course, Brother Bartholomew was a twin. Death rictus upon his face. Fred Watson and I leant our shoulders to the door. Finally, we forced it open to espy the scene within. There, protruding from the neck of the corpse, a long, dark spine of a thorn. Careful, Watson! Unless I'm much mistaken, which I rarely am, I would say that is highly poisonous. And we looked around. It was evident the treasure had been made away with. Thaddeus Sholto already had informed us that this is where he had last seen the same. Yet surely, to abscond with the treasure from this high attic space was more than one person would be able to accomplish. Therefore, would it not be stretching the realms of possibility to suggest he had an accomplice? The window displayed signs. There in the mold of the windowsill, there was a definite impress of a footprint. And there, a circular mark, a timber toe, the wooden leg, of course, stamping about in frustration as evidenced by this scattered flurry of indentations. But how to have reached this chamber in the first place? In the corner, of course, a length of rope that could easily have been affixed to that hook embedded in the wall. Now, of course, the accomplice would be able to tie the rope to the hook to open the window to lower his accomplice down the side of Pondicherry Lodge, whilst that individual clutched hold of the treasure. But what about the accomplice? How on earth was he able to get inside here? There. Now, the aperture in the ceiling. I reasoned that we had certainly no more than half an hour before the official police force trampled upon any clues that remained to be seen. Therefore, we must be swift. Watson stayed there. I clambered into the garage space. There, the bare rafters necessitated a degree of caution. But curious there. The dust had been disturbed. Another clue, a singular footprint. Of a child, certainly small enough to be. And yet we'll observe the toes are widely spread, as though it were wearing a footwear indeed, that is quite often to be found amongst the Polynesian islands. There. Another means by which this accomplice was able to gain entry. The hole in the roof. A skylight. Let us therefore say he was able to get in this way, down through the hole. He would have seen Bartholomew Sholto, and fired the thorn at him, and brought about Sholto's demise. Then he had gone across to the window, had thrown up the sash, had tied the rope to the hook in the wall, had lowered it down, had brought up this second gentleman. One of the bottles, one of the carboys had been spilt over. You will see there. The accomplice, he with the small foot, had stepped into the same. This should afford a rather useful clue to us later on in our pursuit. When the second accomplice had finally made his way up the side of the building, he was incensed at what his accomplice had done by killing Bartholomew Sholto. You will see this again by the stamping of the timber toe of the wooden leg. This individual left the way he had come, and then the rope was pulled up, flung into the corner of the room. And this curious individual, he with the child's foot, he made his escape the way he had come, across the rooftops. Now at that juncture, sadly Thaddeus Sholto appeared in the doorway. He was horrified to witness the uncanny sight of his dead brother. We also heard something of a commotion in the hallway down below. The official representative of the police force, Ethel Jones. Ah, there you are, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. Lucky for you, I was in the area. What? Holmes the theorizer. Well, yes, I know. I know you helped us a little bit before in that other problem. That was luck, don't you understand? Oh, only a matter of time before my knowledge, my experience, my intellect led me to the true culprit of that robbery. Now, what do we have here? Oh dear, what do we have here? Yes, well, we appear to have gentleman dead, thorn. Ah, well, look at the state of him. Look at that face. Oh dear. Yes, brother, of course. Thaddeus Sholto. Officer, take Mr. Sholto away. Detain him. Yes, well, Mr. Holmes, I would say that, well, it stands to reason, yes. Thaddeus Sholto had an argument with his brother Bartholomew over the treasure, killed him, and then went outside. What's that? Oh, yes, and then did the dead man get up and lock the door behind him? Oh, no. I see what you mean. There's something of a flaw in my logic. No, common sense, you see, no. Well, what's that you say? Footprint in the mold on the windowsill? Nothing to do with it, nothing to do. What can that have to do? What can that have to do with the dead man with a thorn sticking out of his neck? Concentrate, Mr. Holmes, theorizer. Concentrate. What hole in the ceiling? Oh, hole in the ceiling, treasure. Yes. What's that you say? You mean there's a hole in the roof? That's how the accomplice got in here, a skylight. Opened, you say? What? Oh, you opened it. Oh, you already know about that. Oh, I see. What's that? Piece of paper tucked to the body, the sign of the four. That's got nothing to do with it. Tomfoolery designed to distract me. Take more than that to distract Athwani Jones. What?
Yes, yeah. Dart, a wooden mallet, thingamabob. Well, that's got nothing to do with it, does it? He collected Oriental artifacts, he said, as some of the others, yes. Well, he might as well be Thaddeus Soto as anyone else to have killed him. I don't know anyone else, mind you. We'll place the housekeeper under arrest as well, to be on the safe side. Thaddeus Soto, of course. Oh, that servant, I didn't like the look of him. Looked a bit foreign, you see. May as well arrest him also. Well, one of them's bound to have done it, eh? What's that? Yes, well, you need more of your bloody theories, won't you, to help you out this time? Not now, Anthony Jones is here. What do you mean, give me a clue? Well, go on then. Well, I reasoned it was for the best that we escape before Watson and I also were placed under arrest. However, I decided I would assist Anthony Jones by describing one of the gentlemen, his name, Jonathan Small, his right leg, missing from the knee downwards. However, this is replaced with a wooden stump, which is worn away upon the inner left-hand side. As for his left leg, he wears a boot, iron soled. The weight is placed greatly upon the inward step. He is small, wiry and active, has a sunburned face, beard and moustaches. Most certain as well that he has abrasions upon the palms of his hand. As for his accomplice, well, he is quite singular. Although I believe there are precedents already set in Senegambia and in India also, yes. I very much hope, Anthony Jones, to introduce you and Mr. Jonathan Small's friend before much longer. Friend Watson, come along, there is work to do.
Now, I sent friend Watson to Sherman's, the bird stuffers. I told him he would recognize the place by a rather charming tableau of a weasel attacking a rodent in the window. I requested Watson to bring back with him a mongrel dog, Toby. I would rather have Toby's help than all of the combined might of Scotland Yard. By the time friend Watson had arrived, thankfully Anthony Jones had found something else to occupy himself with. Therefore, that gave me a few more precious moments. I needed to test for myself, by walking atop the rooftops, whether indeed it would have been possible for the accomplice to have got in that way. Watson, up above, we clambered into the garret, and then through the open skylight. Watson remained behind whilst I, with a piece of cord, made my way across the rooftops to the chimney stacks and then down again. By then, Watson and Toby were waiting for me outside. It was a precarious enough descent, but not impossible. What one man, after all, can achieve, another can replicate. Down the water pipe. Well, down below, of course, there was a water barrel with a lid in situ. Yes, no doubt that is how the accomplice was able to reach once again terra firma. Now, I had dipped a handkerchief within some of the spilt carbolic acid and the creosote from the broken carboy. Toby! Sniff. Toby's tail wagged excitedly, and then I flung the handkerchief far across the lands. Toby, within a matter of moments, picked up the scent, and then we set off. As I said to friend Watson, if the accomplice is anywhere to be seen around here, then rest assured, Toby will be able to find him. Now, as we made our way through the fields, crisscrossing the holes that rather put me in mind of the work of giant moles, evidence indeed of the frantic efforts that the Sholto brothers had put in to find the missing treasure, I outlined to friend Watson at what point we had arrived so far. Now, let us say at the bottom of this, at the cause of all of this problem, there is a treasure. This originated in India. Morstan and Sholto both served in the same regiment. Let us say, therefore, that Morstan went back upon his word. Now, these four individuals, Jonathan Small, well, evidently he is the owner of the wooden leg. You'll recollect also his name is upon that curious piece of paper of the sign of the four. The reason why he could not avail himself of the treasure is that he is a convict, incarcerated. Therefore, Morstan and Sholto, they were in charge of guarding the convicts. The reason why Small did not take the treasure, he was unable to. We will surmise that Captain Morstan went back upon his word. He left the penal colony. He brought the treasure back with him over here to Norwood. Upon hearing of this, Jonathan Small was consumed with revenge. He would have thought nothing more and nothing else of bringing vengeance down upon the head of the gentleman who had wronged him so. Now, you may wonder how I was able to ascertain an approximation of Small's description. Well, of course, he would be sunburned. He has been overseas for this length of time. Naturally, the skin upon the palms of his hands would have been shaved, having slipped down the rope that enabled him to make his escape. He was small. This was easily ascertained by measuring the lengths of strides he had taken. Also that he was angry at the accomplice. Well, you'll recollect that I note he had stamped upon the spot there the marks of the timber toe in the dust. Yes, he managed to scale up the wall of Pondicherry Lodge, then had seen what his ally had done by murdering Brother Bartholomew. Then no doubt he had thrashed him with a rope. Then he had made his escape the way he had come in, bearing the treasure. The accomplice had gone back into the garret and through the hall, across the rooftops, and down the water pipe. Now, at that point, Toby had led us as far as Broad Street to the very edge of the river. It is evident, therefore, that they'd boarded a vessel. And then just over there I saw a sign beside a small, somewhat nondescript-looking shanty. Mr. Mordecai Smith, boats for hire by the hour or the day. Huh. Well, I sent Watson back with Toby. I was sending my thanks and appreciation to Mr. Sherman. Then I determined that I would inquire of this Mordecai Smith as to whether he had recently had business transactions with a Mr. Jonathan Small, a timber toe himself. I knocked upon the door. A woman answered. Mrs. Smith. Yes, I wonder if your husband, Mordecai Smith, is present. I've heard wonderful things regarding his boats, and I would very much like to hire one for... Oh, you say he is not here? You don't know where he is? Oh, dear. Well, I was rather desirous of... In the middle of the night, you say? A man with a wooden leg? Well, how on earth, Mrs. Smith, did you... Oh, of course, the sound of the stump tapping upon the cobblestones. Yes, wonderful. Yeah, well, I wonder, when might you expect Mr. Mordecai Smith to... Oh, he's been gone for 2 days now. Oh, dear. Well, I will ask further along the riverfront. You see, I have heard wonderful things regarding his boat, the Aurora, of course, that is it. Yeah, that is the trim vessel, green with the black... Oh, my mistake, no, black, of course, with the 2 red stripes upon the side, yes. And the Aurora, of course, with the red stripes. Yeah, well, you be sure to, here I have my card, be sure to communicate with me should you hear from Mr. Smith. As to its funnel, of course, it's white, is it not, with, oh no, black. Yes, black with a white bar. Yeah, sorry, I was confusing this vessel with another that had been recommended to me. Knowing it was good, of course, as your husband's. Yes, well, I do hope, Mrs. Smith, he returns very soon. Good day, madam. Thank you for your help. Once more at Baker Street, I summoned a gathering of the irregulars. You may indeed remember their work if you are familiar with the Jefferson Hope business, a study in scarlet. I reasoned that if the Aurora were anywhere above water, then the irregulars should be able to find her. They see everything, they hear everything. I had just finished my breakfast when I heard something of a commotion down in the hallway. The voice of Mrs. Hudson remonstrating with their leader, Wiggins. Suddenly the street arrows themselves came bounding into the room. Please let us have a degree of order, Wiggins. Now, I assigned them all the task of finding the vessel, the Aurora. I described it to them. The usual rates of pay, and a guinea to the irregular who finds her. Go. I reasoned that it was only a matter of time before the Aurora should be found this way, and yet the hours passed and still she remained concealed. And so it was the next day. I decided to investigate the riverside myself, disguised as a somewhat disreputable old sailor. Success at last. I reasoned, you understand, that it would be imperative for Jonathan Small to be able to gain access to the Aurora at a moment's notice. Now, evidently, the vessel could not have been scuppered. Therefore, if I were Jonathan Small, I would have done the following. I would have had the vessel sent into a boatyard on the pretense of some slight alteration or repair. Then it would be safely removed from the main thoroughfare of the river, but be accessible at a moment's notice. Also, it was important for him to keep his rather unusual accomplice hidden away from public view. They'll be wishing to make their escape sooner rather than later. Now, all of this I informed Athelney Jones and friend Watson when I returned to my rooms in Baker Street later that day. Flushed with success, one of the irregulars had been stationed opposite to the entrance to Jacobson's boatyard, where the Aurora was in wait. And as for that night, still I remember it so well. I had instructed Athelney Jones to charter a police launch and to have a number of men aboard her. Friend Watson and I there also. We were stationed opposite to Jacobson's yard, awaiting the emergence of the vessel that we had saw. Finally, in the distance I could see there, the irregular stationed at his post, waving. The Aurora there! There she goes! Burn the boats, men! Do everything you can, but we must catch her! And so began a furious pursuit across the choppy waters of the Thames. The vessel, the Aurora, ahead. Watson, I, and Athelney Jones giving chase in the police launch behind. By degrees, we gained upon her. But it was curious. In the stern of the Aurora, I could see Timbertoe himself, Mr. Jonathan Small, but that strange shape beside him, rather resembling a Newfoundland dog. Small was shaking his fist at us, in anger, in fury. Be careful, Watson. Should his accomplice be there, should you see him clasp a blowpipe to his lips, then I urge you to fire at will. I have no intention of either one of us being added to his list of murder victims. At that point, this nondescript shape emerged from a sheet of tarpaulin. It was the accomplice himself, his teeth gnashing, scarce 3 feet in height. Immediately, he clapped a pipe to his mouth. Watson, fire! Simultaneously, our revolvers rang out. The pygmy accomplice flung up his hands, whirled around, and then toppled overboard. His lifeless corpse sank to the bottom of the Thames. Now that there it remains even to this day, now reduced to sludge and bones. As for the thorn that radially sealed our fate, there it was, embedded in the wooden hide of the Aurora between us. Again we pursued that vessel. "Burn the boat, men, we must! We're gaining on them, see!" I could see Jonathan Small shouting orders at Mordecai Smith. The vessel veered to the right, heading toward the Plumtree Marshes. Eventually it ran aground. Jonathan Small flung himself over the sides. No doubt he thought to make his escape via the mud flats. Yet evidently he knew the game was up. It was only a matter of time, a case of if and not when he was apprehended. He had only gone so far when his wooden leg had sunk all the way up to the knee. He flailed and gesticulated angrily at us, his rage incoherent, his fury apparent. One of Anthony Jones's men flung a rope toward him and hauled him in as though Small was some evil fish. We hauled him above board, and then, with him safely in irons, Anthony Jones, friend Watson, and Jonathan Small made our way back to the rooms in Baker Street. Now, the tale that Mr. Jonathan Small had to say was indeed no trade, a bizarre one. The narrative was begun there upon the police launch and concluded in Baker Street. For the ease of your greater understanding, I will present it to you now as one continuous, flowing narrative. I'll tell you this now. I had nothing to do with Bartholomew Sholto's death. That was Tonga's business. I had no argument with Bartholomew Sholto or the other one. It was the father, John Sholto. I would gladly have swung for him. Tonga was strutting like a bloody peacock when I clambered up, so I'd used one of them poisonous darts on him. I was livid. I thrust him with the rope. I say this to you now. I don't want that going against me at the trial either. I have to laugh. Oh, that money, the Agra Treasure, worth £500,000 sterling. And I'm as entitled to it as any man. For the first half of my life, I spent digging a breakwater out in the Andamans, the rest of it digging ditches in Dartmoor. I was from Worcestershire, originally. I think my family was disappointed in me. Well, there was religious, God-fearing folk, you know. Well, I was of an age, got into a bit of trouble with a girl. Got a girl into a bit of trouble. I wasn't given much of a choice. I had to take the Queen's shilling. Enlist. I never was lucky for long. Hey! No sooner was I over there, stationed in India, decided, go for a swim, the Ganges, halfway across it. Crocodile came after me.
If not for one of the other soldiers coming to my rescue, I'd lost enough blood there and then anyway. It took the leg. The other fellow saved me. Invalided out of the army almost as soon as I'd begun. But I could still ride a horse. I was hard working, I'd made a good impression. That was how I'd able to become an overseer. The plantation, a friend of the captain's, Abel White was his name. I became friends with him. Mr. White was a good employer. All I had to do was ride up and down on horseback, making sure his workers didn't slack off. I thought I was set up for life. Well, you would have heard the spot of bother they had over there. The uprising, the rebels. Abel White was warned. He said he needed to get his workers, his family well out of the way, but no, he said he wouldn't be driven away from everything he worked so hard for. Who can blame him? I remember that day. I've been overseeing that day at a plantation some miles away. When I come back, I saw the smoke climbing skyward. Got closer. The entire place had been burnt to the ground. Abel White's plantation. The rebels had been here. And I saw the bodies burning, hacked to pieces. Mr. White, his family. They were good people. I regarded them as friends. Well, the uprising was such. The Europeans were pushed back. The city of Agra. I followed him. But you see, all of our old troops, what formerly had fought for the empire, all the skills what they had been taught from us were now using them against us. They invaded the city. We was driven back into the old fort. We had hundreds of rifles, hundreds of men against their thousands, millions it felt like. And there were two parts to the fort, the new part and then the old. Or the old part, huge, acres and acres. People did not dare venture in there. They would get lost. It was left for the scorpions and the centipedes to after themselves. It was far too big for the men that we had to be stationed around it adequately. We had to do as best we could. Me was each given a firelock, a couple of servants that have remained faithful. We had to protect the women folk and the children. Well, I was stationed at one of these posts. I was given two men, Muhammad Singh, Abdullah Khan, fearsome-looking individuals. They knew the language well enough, but they kept themselves to themselves. The third night I was stationed there with them. The weather was miserable. I tried to speak to them, even in their own lingo. They didn't want to know. They just kept whispering to themselves. Still, I thought at least they were loyal. Loyal to the British. I thought I'd have a smoke of some baccy. I put my firelock down. Next thing I know, there was onto me, the big one. Mohammed Singh had a dagger to my throat, hissed into my ear through his teeth. If I make a move, he'd slit my throat there and then. Oh, I thought this was meant to be an uprising. I thought the women and the children were in harm. I thought they belonged to the rebels. I was about to scream out. I did not care if they killed me. I was going to give warning. I had to protect the women. It was as though Mohammed Singh read my thoughts. He assured me they were not rebels, they were loyal. The crown, the women and the children were safe. There was something about him that rang true. He said if I raised the alarm, he would have no choice but to kill me. I stayed quiet, therefore. What he had to tell me was to do with this Raja in the northern provinces. Oh, he'd been playing both sides. I mean to say the company and the rebels. He had fantastic wealth. He had divided it, though. He didn't mean to lose out, whichever side won. The money, the gold and the silver he kept by himself, there in his palace or his castle. As for the rest, the diamonds, the rubies, the stones, he had said, in the company of one of his servants, this servant, Mohammed Singh told me, was posing as a merchant. He was going to come over into the fort. He was going to bury it there. So that when all the dust would settle, this Raja would still have his jewels. Mohammed Singh said to me, this merchant would not be travelling alone. Mohammed Singh said his half-brother, Dost Akbar, he was accompanying this merchant. This merchant whose life would not be worth that. Was I with them? That's what Singh asked. They were going to murder the merchant. Take the treasure. Divide it between the four of us. Me and the other three. The four. Always the four with us. No, I did not know anything. The thought of a quarter share of that wealth. More than I could resist. Yeah, I said, I'm with them. The sign of the four always, with us. Before long, the merchant was there. This short, fat fellow in a yellow turban. That would be Dost Akbar. With him, savage-looking fellow, a beard all the way down to his cummerbund. I felt terrible, knowing what was about to happen to this man, this merchant, this servant to the Raja. He looked so pitiful, like a mouse. Looked up at me, asking if he could be admitted to the fort for safety. My heart started to soften toward him, but I knew that Mohammed Singh, Abdullah Khan, they were listening to everything. If I listened to any more, my heart would have weakened. I said. Dost Akbar went in with him. I tried not to think what was going to happen. He looked so bloody trusting. And they went into the old fort. Mohammed Singh, Abdullah Khan, either side of him. It was followed by Dost Akbar. And then inside I heard this scream, a scuffle, and then the merchant came running out, blood across his face, screaming for help. I felt so sorry for him. Akbar was running him down like a tiger, bounding after him. But I thought of the jewels. I stuck the firelock between the merchant's feet. He fell over, tumbled twice, and was still. I hope he broke his neck. I hope he was already dead before Akbar plunged his dagger into his side twice. We carried the body into the old part of the fort. We buried it in a shallow grave. As for the treasure, $500,000 sterling, diamonds, rubies, sapphires. We made a careful note of where it was. I drew up a plan. Carefully. We all four signed it. Jonathan Small, Dost Akbar, Mohammed Singh, Abdullah Khan, the sign of the four. We buried the treasure where the ground had sunk in of its own accord. There we would leave it for the notice of the scorpions and the centipedes, till everything had calmed down again, and then calmly we would come back. We would retrieve our fortunes. Well, you don't need me to tell you what happened. That uprising was quelled soon enough. They found out about the merchant. You understand, this Raja had sent the merchant, but then to look over him, he'd sent an even more trusted servant. He wondered where he had gone. The first one with the treasure. He gained admittance to the fort. Went asking around. They found the body, though it did not take them long to realize who had done it. It was all placed under arrest. They did not find the treasure. Our treasure! Khan Akbar Singh, he was sentenced for life. I was sentenced to death. This was commuted, though. Penal servitude. So from Agra, I was sent to Blair Island, then to the Andamans. God-forsaken spot. Savages there, pygmies, would shoot a poisoned dart into your hide as much as look at you. I had a good way about me. I was made an assistant to one of the surgeons there, dispensing medicine. This surgeon was fond of playing cards. So was I. I used to stand in the shadows of his surgery and watch him play. With some of the other officers, it was good as having a hand of my own. That is how I met Arthur Morstan, John Sholto. They were the two of the ones that played. Oh, they always lost heavily, Morstan especially. I would hear them bemoaning their losses as I waited inside my tent. Morstan was beginning to drink more than was good for him. I eavesdropped to what they were saying to each other. How Sholto was losing so much money, he would carry on playing, hoping that his luck would turn, and then it didn't, and he was even more in debt. And then he took to the drink. A fool's game. Oh, I got to thinking, could I not use this to my advantage? One day I got this. Sholto alone, I said to him, hypothetically, like, changing some of the details so he would not know. I told him about the treasure, how it was forfeit. And the Raja himself now outlawed, therefore. Them who found it, kept it. I said, what should I do? By right, should I hand it over to the authorities? Oh, I got his interest. He told me to say nothing of this to anyone else. He would mull it over for a day or so and then come back. And he would. Captain Morstan. Always Morstan was the more level-headed of the two. Sholto told me to explain again. This is when I told them what I wanted in return. Sholto and Morstan were to share a fifth between themselves. Oh, Sholto did not like this. He bridled, but Morstan told him, shh. I said I had the wealth. I knew where it was. But I was trapped here. All I needed was a vessel, if that could be put off the coast somewhere to allow me to get away from this swamp. Also, I wished liberty for my three friends, Akbar, Singh, Khan. Always the four with us. If they could promise me that. And Sholto and Morstan could share a fifth. That would still be enough for them to save their skins. There was a final meeting. To this, my three comrades were there. It was agreed. The four of us put our mark to it, the sign of the four. All we needed was for Sholto to uphold his end of the bargain. He lied, he betrayed us. You see, he had said he wanted to go to the fort at Agra to verify what we had said. Well, the plan had been that he would go there. Then he would inform his colleague, Morstan. And then he and I would travel to the Agra fort itself. Morstan would take the share for himself and Sholto. Then I would be allowed my freedom. Morstan had received word. Sholto had left, gone back on one of the boats to England. He'd bought his way out of the army. And then, when Morstan went to the fort, found the treasure was gone. You betrayed us all. From that moment on, I wanted nothing more than his blood on my hands. Captain, Sholto would pay for what he had done to me and the others. He got to the point where I did not even care for the treasure. It was his neck wrung. By then, I'd made for myself a friend, one of those pygmies that crawled away to die. Tonga. I nursed him back to health. I knew enough of his lingo. I went to the trouble. He developed a fondness for me, like a dog, took to following me around. I found out that he had a canoe of his own. I realized that then, that was how I could get away from this place, travel to England, find out where Sholto lived. Kill him. Tonga did not betray me. Just off the coast late that night, he was there. With his back to us, there was this warden had always gone out of his way to belittle me, to make my life difficult. I will give him something to remember Jonathan Small by. I wanted to bash his brains in. I looked around for a rock, couldn't find nothing. And then I remember my timber toe. I unscrewed my leg. 3 long hops, and I was onto him. Bashed in his skull. I do not regret it. Once I was convinced he would not bully anyone else no more. Screwed the wooden leg back in and went on my way with Tonga. We sailed for so long. You need not know how I was able to find where Sholto lived. Pondicherry Lodge, that does not concern you. I once arrived in England. I found him. All this while we've been forced to beg. I was putting Tonga on display at fairs, making him dance, eat raw meat, for pennies and coppers flung our way. When I was rightfully in possession of a fortune. That night, Sholto died. I was looking in at the window. I got there too late. One of them came running out after me. I watched him give up the hunt. I was hidden away in the bushes. Later, I went inside, looking for any paperwork, looking for any clue, looking for that treasure. I wanted it to be known who was responsible for this, and I pinned the sign of the 4 to his breast. I wanted the world to know, them that would know, I'd been avenged. My informant kept me abreast of how their quest for the treasure was going there, digging up the grounds. By this same informant I learned. And Bartholomew Sholto had found it. I knew the lie of the land well enough. I had planned that we would wait until Bartholomew had left the garret room. He was down having dinner. Then we were going to get it. I had no argument with the children. I did not wish to see Bartholomew killed. I sent Tonga ahead of me. He saw Bartholomew there. He fired one of those blasted darts. Thorns sticking out of his skin. By the time Tonga hauled me up, through that window I saw the dead man. took the treasure. And with it I was lowered back down to the ground. Oh, incidentally, Mordecai Smith knows nothing about the affair. All he knew enough was to sail me and Tonga out to a vessel, the Esmeralda. And then we would have made good our escape, begun our lives anew. George, you want to know where the treasure is now? Well, if Mr. Sherlock Holmes was clever enough to find me, to place me under arrest, then I knew you would be clever enough to find a treasure, which is why I did what I did. Now, you may have the trunk there. And when you opened it, I may imagine the look of surprise upon your faces to see it empty. You can have the trunk as a souvenir. For the treasure itself, that has gone the way where Tonga is. And at the bottom of the river. If Sherlock Holmes can find me, then he'll easily be able to retrieve a treasure chest. But if that treasure was scattered over 5 miles or more, not even Sherlock Holmes should be able to find that. Not so easily. The first half of my life, digging a breakwater in the Andamans, and now the rest. Digging ditches in Dartmoor. So now you know. The secret of the Agra Treasure. The answer to the riddle of the sign of the four. Why I spent so many years thirsting for vengeance. Now you know the unhappy tale of me, Mr. Jonathan Small.
And truly a remarkable account. I'm sure you'll agree. The one thing that did trouble me, now I had picked up the small bag containing all of Tonga's poisonous darts. And yet, there was the dart that had embedded itself into the Aurora's timber. Between friend Watson and I. Ah, yes, of course. Of course, there was already a dart still left within. The pie, of course. Well, Anthony Jones led Jonathan Small away. To a prison cell. As for Watson, now that Miss Mary Morstan had had this fortune of hers removed from the equation, therefore he was at total liberty to woo her, to pursue her, to court her as only friend Watson would be able to. A romance is highly problematic. You may as well introduce an elopement into the fifth proposition of Euclid, or to have a crack in the lens of some finely tuned scientific instrument. Leads to chaos. And so here I am, waiting in Baker Street for the next scientific problem to present itself to me. I trust the wait will not be too long. At least until then, you know where you may find me. should any of you wish to engage my professional services. Know you, therefore, my fees are upon a fixed scale. I never vary them, save I remit them altogether. The work itself is its own highest reward. Work, you understand. What else is there to live for?